Questions.
Yeah, so lately I have been seeing that I run into situations where I do an action and I know that I should be doing that without attachment to the outcome. That I should not be attached. I should just do the action because it's what's needed in the situation. But the attachment doesn't is not going away. Like I still feel those emotions of fear when I do the action because I'm attached. And how many and I've done many reps thinking that I should not, like, that this is not the right frame. Like I I logically understand, but still emotionally, it's still the attachment still exists. So how many reps do I need to do, or like what can I do so that attachment actually goes away?
Okay, we're going to need a concrete example.
So like let's say, let's just this week I went to see a few doctors to get my mom checked out. So every time a doctor will tell me something like positive, that okay, like she doesn't need surgery, things like that,
Slow
I
down so
feel
people can
happy.
slow down so people can understand you. Okay? So every time you go to a doctor and they tell you something positive, go ahead.
Yeah, then it feels good that this is going because I'm attached to my mom. So it feels, yeah, that she's gonna be fine.
So you're going to
But
doctors for your
uh,
mom.
yeah, I was going to doctor
Okay,
for my
good.
mom, not
All
for
right.
myself.
Good, good, good. Okay, good. Keep
And
going.
then yeah, and then
Sorry, I don't
whenever
understand.
there's a possibility that the doctor will say, like, let's say it's like one doctor said that, oh, maybe we'll try this treatment, and if she doesn't get better, then maybe we'll need to do surgery. And then I felt the fear and the anxiety that came with it, even though I know I should not be attached to the outcome, but still the emotions are still there. So I don't know what, like, I don't know what else I can do other than telling myself that the yeah. So I just don't know how what can I do so that attachment actually goes away emotionally too, not just logically.
Okay, good question. There's a few points. One is because we're talking about your mom, don't worry about any of this. Just take care of your mom. All right?
Mm-hmm.
At this level. Two, and this is a more useful point, is it hard to let go of the positive feelings? When the doctor says something positive, like say she's not going to need surgery, and you feel good,
Mm-hmm.
how easy is it to let go of the positive feeling?
That is pretty easy.
Mm-hmm. Now, what happens when you get a negative feeling, like, oh, this may not work, she may need surgery?
Yeah. So then suddenly there's a rush of fear, and
Okay,
then
good, good, good.
there's
So you
obsessive
see,
thoughts.
yeah. So you see that there's a asymmetry here. The positive
Mm-hmm.
ones, they kind of they can float off. They don't last very long necessarily. But the negative ones, the ones rooted in fear, they're much harder to get rid of.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that?
The ones rooted in fear, because fear is more primal,
Excellent.
primitive.
And why is it? Why do we call it more primal?
Because survival is the main thing
Right.
for a
Exactly.
human to
Exactly.
survive.
Exactly. So we're mammals, and even if we weren't mammals, if we were birds or even worms, flatworms, even if we were a amoeba, we would be very, very interested in survival because that's the way the animal is, right? The goal is to survive.
Mm-hmm.
So now, what if you got rid of the positive emotions? See, because what we have here is we have positive on one side and negative on the other. This should be
Mm-hmm.
symmetrical, right? Well, actually, this could be negative here, much bigger, and over here is positive. What would happen if you got rid of the positive ones?
If I got rid of the positive ones, then the only thing left is the negative one.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And the experience of something is very different if there's no opposite to it.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say you live in a place where it's, I don't know, it's 45 degrees.
Mm-hmm.
But some days it goes up to 72. It's beautiful, gorgeous, right? But then then there's a few days where it's 45 degrees and cloudy, overcast.
Mm-hmm.
And you get upset because you like the good weather, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in principle, if you never had those days of good weather, after a while you just get used to the 45 degrees and there wouldn't be any positive or negative associated with it. It's just the way it is.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the delta, it's the valence between the positive and the negative that creates the issue. And this also, by the way, while we're on that, while I've got my hands like this is also the problem with self-esteem. People think that they should be here, but see that they're here, and then this creates this gap, this delta between the positive and the negative, between the should be's and the actuals, are what create the suffering, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if you didn't have the polarities, if you just said, okay, it's neither good nor bad, it's neither positive nor negative, it's what it is.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one. That you have a polarity set up. And if you didn't have that polarity, you got rid of all the positive feelings and said, oh, well, she's going to get surgery, or she's going to, suffer all her life, and she's going to, this is going to be a total catastrophe. If you really believe that all the time, I'm not suggesting you did, but if you did do that, then you wouldn't have bad feelings. It'd just be that's the way it is.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So then, and the second point is one that Eckhart Tolle would make, is that both your positive and your negative feelings are all in the future.
Mm-hmm.
And you're not being with what is.
Mm-hmm.
So now, of course, you're human and she's your mom. So, ideally we wouldn't be talking about your mom. We'd be talking about your donkey or something. Or your car, falling apart or something. A car repair. So forgive me in advance, because with our moms it's very different, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a beautiful Mullah Nasruddin story about this, by the way, and it's where they play the game I forget. Have you read that?
Mm-hmm.
The mullah and his wife were playing a game with each other that whoever said the one who forgot to say I forget would lose. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And they played this game for years and years and years.
Mm-hmm.
And then she had a son, and Mullah hadn't seen his son. And so he comes home one day, from a trip. He's been away. And he loses the game because he sees his son, right?
Mm-hmm.
He forgets to forget, right? Or whatever. Okay? So something like that. It's much better with Idris Shah. But the other thing is that every one of these things is in the future.
Mm-hmm.
And the future is totally imaginary. Completely 100% imaginary.
Mm-hmm.
And the older you get, the more you realize you never know what's going to happen that day. You really don't. And the older you get, you see more and more. Go ahead.
If I would have actually believed that the future is totally uncertain, like anything can happen with equal probability, then it would have been different. But I have these ideas that certain possibilities are more probable than the other ones.
And those are the negative ones, right? The negative ones, right?
It depends. Sorry, just a second. It depends. So, like, let's say when I go to an expert, like when I go to a doctor.
Oh, God forbid. Okay, go ahead.
When they tell me something, it carries more weight than, let's say before going to the doctor, I was 50-50. Okay, maybe this thing can happen, maybe the other thing can happen. Now, when I go to an expert, where I am not the expert, but the other person is, then their words carry more weight than my own ideas. And that shifts the probabilities, and that creates this idea that some things are more probable than the others.
Yeah, but probable doesn't mean. It was more probable that Hillary Clinton was going to win the 2016 election. If you read the New York Times, it was more probable that we were going to win in Vietnam. It was more probable that a vastly more powerful, rich, and dedicated army of Americans would prevail in Afghanistan. It was not probable that the Taliban, using rifles left over from World War I, some of them, were going to defeat the strongest military power on earth. But that's what happened. And as you get older, you'll see that these probabilities are just probability. Probability is a way of running away from reality. And someone said it really brilliantly, may have been you, that probabilities are a way of escaping the sheer shock of quantum mechanics. It's mind-numbing, the truth of quantum mechanics, and action at a distance. And so we use things like probability because Schrodinger's cat, we can't deal with it. So we call it probability waves of probability. So, all right, so yeah, but your mind works that way, right? And that's a tragedy. The human mind is not built very well for certain things. Now, do you ever watch Star Trek?
I have seen the first one, yeah.
Okay, so do you know Dr. Spock?
Yeah.
How would Dr. Spock deal with these two things?
Dr. Spock will be...
I met him. He was filling helium balloons at a 5 and dime store when I was a kid. It was like, what? Mm-hmm. What are you doing here? But that's what he was doing. He was filling helium balloons at a 5 and dime store in the middle of nowhere, which is where I'm from. But anyway, go ahead. So how would Dr. Spock handle this stuff?
I mean, my perception of Dr. Spock is very logical, and he somehow doesn't feel the emotions.
And how is he at decision making compared to the rest of the crew?
He's better at decision making
Absolutely.
than the other people.
Yeah. So now if you really, really, really wanted to help your mom, and again, I'm sorry this is about your mom, I'd much rather it be about a girlfriend, or your car. But, we deal with what we can. Would you make better decisions with your positive and negative feelings and fears and hopes, which are all emotions, or they're emotionally laden, or would you make better decisions if you were Dr. Spock?
I would make better decisions when the emotions are not involved. So
Correct. So it's good to know that. Now, it's impossible to do that, as far as I know, almost impossible to do it if it's a family member that you love and depend on and rely on, and that's someone someone who depends on you and that you're related to by blood, right? Can't do it. And that's fine. But for teaching purposes, wouldn't you be wiser? Wouldn't you be more able to discern between the different experts and the folk tales and your own ideas and the internet if you had a mind like Dr. Spock?
Yeah, that'd be...
Okay, the mind like Dr. Spock is the mind of a Buddhist. I've seen some of these guys. It's pretty amazing. They're very, very rational. As a matter of fact, they're far more rational than the atheists who call themselves rationalists in the 21st century, who are actually fanatics. They're not rational. So, does that help?
I mean, it helps, but it's still the same problem.
It is. But you're a human being and you have a mother. You love your mother. Your mother loves you, and until she's gone, it's always going to be a struggle for you. But after she's gone, or either that or you wake up. If you wake up, then all the problems are over, because she won't be taken from you. Right? But until you wake up, you're going to have to struggle with this.
Okay, so until someone actually wakes up, it's going to be a struggle until then.
I hope so, because if you don't struggle, that means she doesn't have a heart. All right? Now, the LLMs and the AIs will probably help with this too, because they are dispassionate, or I hope they are. Ooh, I hope we don't screw those up and bias them and everything else, but I'm afraid we're doing that. Okay? That's the best I can do with that. That's a tough situation. Just do the best you can.
I mean, but so not to generalize, but the problem is similar in everything else. Like everything, whatever action I do, most of the actions I do, whenever there's something at stake, then the emotions come in.
Okay, you want to make that into a
And
question? Make it into a question, can you?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Question.
yeah. So I've also seen that in most of my actions, whenever there's something at stake, then the emotions come up and then affects me emotionally and also affects the decision making also to some extent. Then the same problem exists. How can I, so knowing that I should not be emotional, knowing I would be better at decision making than otherwise,
Okay.
how can I get to the end point where, yeah.
All right. Prior to waking up, there is a way to deal with this very, very well. And it's best articulated by a man named Edward DeBono, a Maltese physician who spent a life thinking about thinking, right? Very, very smart man. And although he's not at all related to psychology or to Dharma studies or to spirituality or to science per se, he's a brilliant man. And he came up with a method called the Six Hats Method. Now, are you familiar with that book?
Yeah.
All right, so you know that he says he uses the metaphor of a hat because a hat you can put on and take off, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so
Yeah.
if he says, if he's so we have six hats. We have a white hat, a red hat, a blue hat, a green hat, a yellow hat, and a black hat. Now,
Mm-hmm.
when we put on the black hat symbolically, all we want is data. We want to know what studies have been done, what's the data, what's the information, what we just need to collect the information on this decision that we're getting emotional about. Then we want to put on we could put on the black hat. And the black hat is all of the negative emotions that have to do with the decision. You know, like I'm going to let this surgeon, no, I don't want to get into that. I'm going to merge this company. What are the things that could go wrong? And with your black hat on, now you have the data, and now you have all the negative emotions, all the things that could go wrong, all the bad things that could happen. You could lose your job. You could go bankrupt. You could be laughed out of town, right? You could never get a job again. You just let free rein while you're wearing the black hat. But then you take off the black hat and you put on the yellow hat. Now yellow is kind of like the sun. It's bright. And now you think of all the positive things. Oh, this merger is going to go great. We're going to make a fortune. Everybody's going to get along together. We're going to create a much better product. There's going to be synergies. Oh man, I'm going to be on Time Magazine's Man of the Year page, whatever. That's the yellow hat.
Mm-hmm.
Be as optimistic as you can be. And with the black hat, remember, you're going to be as negativistic as you can be. And with the white hat, you're going to be neither of those. You're just going to collect data.
Mm-hmm.
Now we get to the green hat. And in the green hat, we want to know, well, this is interesting. What kind of ideas, what kind of, green is for the creative field, right? What kind of ideas spring from this decision? If I was to do this, then what would that make possible? Or what would this make possible? You know, or what are the possibilities here? We could grow this into a newspaper. We could get acquired. You know, we could spin off a related product. We can use the expertise of the company we are acquiring to make something totally different, right? So that's the it's optimistic, but it's also creative. So that's the green cat, right? Then you take off the green cap, and what do we have left? We have white, black, yellow, green. What color am I missing? I want to save the blue for last. White, black, yellow, green. Oh, red. Oh, okay, red. Red. Okay, so now red hat, you put that on, and red is for the emotions. Red is for the heat of the emotions, or the heart, right? And so with the red cap on, you just let all your emotions go wild, all your positive emotions, all your negative emotions, or you could just go, I don't like this. I don't know why. I just don't like it. like your intuition too. Or you say, I'm loving this thing. It makes me feel really good. It makes me feel warm and fuzzy. It makes me feel energized. It makes me feel all the, it doesn't have to even be rational. It's whatever your emotional center says. So you're using you're using your brain, right, with your white data, your white cap. You're looking at the negatives with your black cap. You're looking at the positives with your yellow cap. You're looking at the creative possibilities with your green cap. And the red cap, which may be one you want to start with, is just, how do I feel about this? A priori. Like, I don't like the idea. And you don't have to explain it. You shouldn't explain it. You should just examine your gut. I don't like this idea. It makes, it doesn't make me feel good. Or, I love this idea, but I don't know why. It just feels right. Okay, so that's the emotional, that's the red hat, emotional hat. That's very important. And then you put on the blue hat, and the blue stands for the sky. And then you lift yourself up like 20,000 feet in the air. And you look at the whole situation from the sky. Like, wait a minute, where does this fit into the larger picture of things? How have I gotten all tightened up and wrapped up in my own little possibilities here? I'm not seeing the larger picture. All right? How does this scale, for example? Or how does this fit with the other initiatives that people are doing? How does it fit with the economic times? Okay? So using the 6 hat method, and I'll repeat it one more time. White hat for data. Black hat for negative emotions. Yellow hat for positive emotions. Green hat for creative possibilities. Red hat for just how do you feel, independent of everything else. Just how do you feel about it? I don't like mergers. Or I love mergers. Whatever. It's how you feel with no justification. And then the blue hat is looking at it from a distance and looking at the overall thing. Macroeconomics, climate, political climate, what's likely to happen in the future, what happened in the past, all that other stuff. And then when you have all these together, now you can start thinking clearly. Now these are hacks, obviously, for human primate brains, because we're not Dr. Spock, right? Nor do we want to be. But you ask the question, how can you get some distance or when you're making a decision, and how can you get rid of this attachment to one outcome or another? Well, until you can develop true dispassion, right? Because frankly, you're not in control of the whole thing anyway. You must discipline your mind and use it well, right? And you could do this with a medical decision too. Okay? And if you don't have time to do all this, you could do a PMI, but we'll talk about this some other time. All right?
Got it.
Questions?
I have one.
Oh, by the way, let me give a citation on that. That's Edward DeBono, The 6 Thinking Hats. That's the shortest of all his books on thinking about thinking. He also has other beautiful books on Poe and on just on thinking. And he had a major influence on education back in the day. And corporate people just love this guy because what he said makes a lot of sense. I respect and admire his work. Okay, go ahead. Question?
I wanted to ask you about one of your tweets which was said by Nisargadatta Maharaj.
Oh, good. Nisargadatta.
It was.
How did you say it? I want to hear it said. I want to hear it said properly. Say it properly. Nisargadatta. Okay, cool. Nisargadatta.
Yeah.
I'll never get it. Okay. Nisargadatta. Okay, go ahead. What's the question?
Yeah, so it was a series of 3 tweets that I wanted to just talk with you and get your, maybe if you can elaborate more on those.
Okay.
That'd be great.
All right, here we go. Ready?
Because this. Yeah.
Let's start it. Question.
Yeah, so this question is about a series of tweets which was said by a series of tweets by you of Nisargadatta Maharaj. And it was about I am.
Oh, good.
And I just want to get your thoughts on those, maybe elaborate on what those tweets are about or what they mean.
I love those. Go ahead.
Yeah, so the first one is, this I am is an announcement. It is not the real. it has come out of something else. What the real is, I'm not telling you, because words negate that. Whatever I'm telling you is not the truth, because it has come out of that I am.
Okay. Now, with Nisargadatta, forgive my pronunciation, he writes distinctly differently when he's 82 and he's facing death. All right? And I didn't know this material existed until recently. And so when he was younger and healthy, he wrote one way because he was dealing with, anybody that came around, right? Students from California, from other parts of India, from England, Europe, Australia. So that's one kind of writing. Oh, he didn't write, he just spoke. So he's speaking to one kind of group, right? Now he's 82 years old and he's sick and he's facing death. So he writes differently because now he's going to be more serious. And he even said there, he says, I'm tired. I'm not going to do kindergarten spirituality anymore, right? You need to do your own work. You need to read the books, right? Do some contemplation on your own and take this seriously. He's not in the entertainment business anymore. He's serious. So he said, what does he say? This I am is I can't read my writing.
It's an announcement.
It's an announcement, yeah. I'm not sure about the translation of announcement. And then read the next line.
It is not the real.
It is not the real, correct.
It has come out of something else.
Right. Okay, so I am, and this has always troubled me about this I am stuff. When you say I am, you've already created an object. When you say I am that, you've already misspoken. I mean, it's obvious. You look at the book cover, it says I am that. Well, that can't be right? But it keeps people happy for a while, and they're just going to wander off to the next teacher anyway. It was kind of a tourist route, and he was on it. But now that he's 82, he's not screwing around. So he points out that the I am is not the real. That's still an objectification of that which cannot be objectified. So it's not the real. Now, what is the real? He's not going to say because he can't say. Because there is a real before being and non-being. Before both of those. And considerably before duality, right? So I don't know if this will work, but we could have duality, non-duality, I am, which is, you're basically saying I am. That's kind of like an announcement, right? But the real is not at this level. The real is prior to both being and non-being. Now, he didn't want to say anything, but I will. It's what the ancient proto-Taoists, the people who wrote the I Ching, which precedes the Tao Te Ching by a few hundred years at least, maybe 500 years, who knows. It calls it the creative. All right? That's just a word. And it's like a finger pointing. But not just at the moon, beyond the moon, to something that created the moon and the finger and the pointing and the looking. And a word that one can use that I like at the moment is the creative. Okay? So that's that one. Okay, good. Thank you for getting it. I think that's really important because people are really lost in this non-duality stuff.
I have a follow-up on that.
Good.
So a few years ago, I read that book, I Am That. Not full, but almost 80%. And I also went through a book where it was documented how Nisargadatta Maharaj entered into spirituality, how he got enlightened, stuff like that.
Right.
And in that book, it was said that he was given instruction by his guru to focus on the I amness. And
right.
by I amness is the feeling that when I say I, there's a feeling I can localize in the body or around the body that feels like this is the I am thing. So so at that time, that was my understanding that the whole I am business he's talking about, it's focused on that identity feeling, not idea, which is not concrete, but a concrete thing that I can actually grasp on, that he was talking about. Is that correct, or
Let
was
me
that
ask you a question. At that time in your understanding, although that's not where we want to be, what's the difference between being and I amness?
I amness is not real. It's a to me it feels like it's a thought that came up, and then that thought kind of generated this kind of feeling or sensation that I experienced, and it just persisted since then.
I amness is not real. But being sure as hell is.
Mm-hmm.
But if there's being, there's going to be non-being. And if there's being and non-being, then there must be something antecedent to that, and that's where the Tao Te Ching comes in.
Mm-hmm.
Here, let me just see if I can grab something real quick. This is the first passage. I'm just going to read the whole thing because it's so beautiful, and I'll emphasize the part that's important. The first chapter. A way can be a guide, but not a fixed path. Names can be given, but not permanent labels. Non-being is called the beginning of heaven and earth. Being is called the mother of all things. Always passionless, thereby observe the subtle. Ever intent, thereby observe the apparent. These two come from the same source, but differ in name. Both are considered mysteries. The mystery of mysteries is the gateway of marvels. We won't get into the opening of the mysterious female and all that stuff, but okay, so you can see then how you have to go back to that passage and contemplate it. But that's a very good, excellent, good. So you've avoided a trap of the mind.
Mm-hmm.
Now, again, these are all just words, and people use words very differently. But the way you explain it to me sounds like you got it. Good. You're not going to find anything in a thought of any sort. You're not going to find any truth in a thought. I mean, you'll find some relative truth, right? You know, the earth is round and the moon reflects white light at night. But that's relative truth. That's trivial. Truth is not in thoughts. It's extraordinary. Okay, another question or follow-up?
Yeah, I have now I wanna read out the second tweet in
Okay,
this series.
here we go.
It was
Question.
now I wanna read out the second tweet in the series.
Okay.
It says, "The I amness vista appeared in the child body as it is here today, but because of Maya, continuous changes takes place. The situation has changed, but I amness still continues. For how long? For so long as the food body is viable. When the food body is dropped by the vital breath, the I amness will set. So I amness is not permanent either. The consciousness is not permanent. It's not permanent."
The I am, okay. So remember, he's an older man now, and he's wiser.
Mm-hmm.
The I amness appeared with the child body, right? Or with the child. Read the first sentence. Appeared with or in the child?
The I amness vista appeared in the child body as it is here today.
Vista?
Vista, yeah.
V-I-S-T-A.
Yeah.
Okay. So the view I amness appeared in the child's body. And it's still here. Is that what he says next? What's the next line?
Yeah. Yeah, as it is here today.
Right. Good. Next line.
but because of Maya, continuous changes take place. The situation has changed, but I amness still continues.
Yeah, so the details change, right? But the idea that I am continues.
To me, like it also
Well, wait a
fits
minute.
not
Let's
just the
finish this.
idea.
Let's finish this first. So the I am, and then what's the final line?
For how long? For so long as the food body is viable.
Okay, now he uses food body as a way to describe this corpse. This animated corpse.
Yeah.
The food body.
Yeah.
All right, now go on.
When the food body is dropped by the vital breath.
When you drop, when the vital breath drops the body, right? Go ahead.
The I amness will set.
Set, S-E-T.
Yeah.
It'll set like the sun.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, because see, that's all part of the food body. That's all part of the that's a second level of understanding. So here we have duality. Well, here we have complete unconsciousness. Hey, I just go to my job, I just do my stuff, and I go home and I go to bed and I drink some beer and watch soccer. Then we have the next up. Hey, something's going on out here. There's something. There's a spiritual aspect to me. I'm not a human having spiritual experiences. I'm a spirit having human experiences. Right. Then you get to the I am stage of non-duality. I am that. Right. I am all of this. It's usually intellectual. It's usually not grokked. You can't grok it until you've experienced it, right? And then you can't change it. And then you get to the level where you realize, wait a minute, this I amness sets also. And now we're in a country for old men, right? To put it in Yeats' terms. So now we're in a country for old men, finally. Whew. Okay? So you don't need to get too concerned with that last part yet, because there's other things to get to first.
You mean the last part about the consciousness is not permanent?
Right.
That thing? Okay.
Now remember, he uses consciousness differently than we do. See, how many times does he mention? How many times does he mention mind? He doesn't.
Not.
So he uses consciousness as a synonym for mind. We don't. We see mind as an object in consciousness. Okay, sir?
Got it.
Anything else? Yeah. Another question?
Yeah, then the next tweet in the series.
Okay. Question.
Yeah, then the next tweet in the series, it says, the knowledge I am is the same in all sentient creatures, whether it be an insect, a worm, or a human being, or even an avatar, the highest kind of being. I do not consider this basic consciousness in one form as being different in any way from the consciousness in another form.
Is that it?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
All right. This one's a bit tricky because there is a difference. And, he was from a different century. He didn't read a lot of books. He didn't study with a lot of other teachers. He woke up and then he just kept going, right? And I noticed that he makes errors like that sometimes. Like once recently I saw something where he was stating that worms came spontaneously from apples. No, from cow dung. That worms spontaneously grew from cow dung, and drawing some conclusions from that. So that's too bad, right? So you got to understand, he's a different time, different epoch, and science is not his forte. Here, I don't think he's making a distinction between self-awareness, a mind that is capable of self-awareness, and the impact of that on consciousness, or the coloring that gives to consciousness, to the creature who's not self-aware and who just is, Now, of course, this world is made of dream stuff, the whole thing, right? And that dream stuff is consciousness. And so what he's saying about worms and insects and all that is perfectly true. But I think there's a fundamental distinction that should be made, and I think it should be elaborated further, that there's a difference between creatures that are self-aware and ones that aren't. Because only creatures that are self-aware have a chance of becoming enlightened in the way that we're speaking. And there was an important point related to that. Okay, did you see the post on the ones and zeros and the little automatons that play the game of life and form these little creatures in cyberspace?
I don't think so.
Okay, some woman is pointing out that exactly this question. She's talking about the consciousness of bacteria and da 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 da. And then some clever kid says, here, let me see if I can help you. He gives the analogy of someone who probably believes in the simulation, and he showed how then on a computer matrix or screen, you could see these dots, ones and zeros, right, forming little automatons that move around, that eat each other, that acquire information, metabolize it, and then die, and all this and that. And he gave the thought experiment. If you were to ask, and then they get more elaborate, right? And if you were to ask any of these creatures, and we could elaborate even more into like video games, if you were to ask them, are you a real? They'd say, yeah, I'm real. And from in their world, they are real, right? These fake, these computer-generated automatons. But for us, looking outside at the computer screen, we're looking at the computer screen and we go, no, it's not real. It's just ones and zeros moving around on a screen, right? But for them inside here, they feel that it's real. Now, there's a lot of problems with that. And so I really recommend you go through that series, right? It's very important series, because humans have the same problem and question. But the problem is that they also swear that they're conscious and they're real. People who are completely asleep are sure that they're real and that they're conscious. So now you got to go through that. And also in the last video, I think it was discussed. Yeah, I think yesterday's video that got discussed. So cover that too, okay? Because that's specifically for you, actually. Because it's a beautiful analogy and a nice metaphor and also a nice thinking contemplation exercise. How are we humans different than that? And how is that consciousness related or not related to our own consciousness? And how can that subjective feeling of being real, which these little creatures have, how is that related to our feelings of being real, right? It's rich, but you got to keep up with it, man. You got to keep up. I mean, if you aren't doing Dharma every day, you're not doing Dharma, right? And I'm not trying to say you should or you shouldn't, but I'm saying don't pretend. If you're not doing it every day, you're not doing it, right?
Yeah.
Okay, sir. Anything else before we stop?
I think there are like 2 more tweets in the series, but we can talk about it next time.
Well, real quick. Let's do it while I'm sitting up.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, the next one is, now there are some people who say, I was so and so in the previous existence. How do they know? They could only have sprung from the 5 elements, and before the 5 elements were created, the previous knowledge could not have been there. Therefore, it is utter nonsense, rubbish.
What is utter rubbish and nonsense?
The people claiming that they remember their previous...
So he's saying reincarnation is nonsense and rubbish.
Yeah.
Don't you think that's hilarious?
More than hilarious is more shocking and thought-provoking.
Good. That's what we want. Shocking. No, it doesn't have to be shocking. Thought-provoking. So now you think, okay, What has Dr. A said about adopting the opinions of others? What has Dr. A said about trusting authority? You have to think for yourself, and that's what that one's for. Now you have to think for yourself, but now you have something thrown in the mix, right? This Hindu master or Vedanta master, by all accounts, is saying that this is rubbish, right? So what do you make of that? That's a very interesting thing, right? That's contemplation exercise. So just think about it for a while. It'll stay with you for a lifetime. Just think about it.
Got it.
All right, the next one.
And then the last one is
okay.
The identity.
Start over. Go ahead.
Yeah, and the last one is the identity comes only when there is a knowledge I am. So if that itself is not there, who is there to ask? This is to be understood not by someone with a body mind identity, but it must be experienced, and in such a manner that the experiencer and the experience are one. Therefore, you become the experience. Only that way you can know, and it is not the mind that knows it.
Perfect. He says it beautifully. Crystal clear, comprehensive. It's right there. I can't say it better, and I can't add to that. I think he says that perfectly. All right, sir?
All right, yeah.
Okay, anything else before we stop?
No, that's
okay. All right. Have a great day. We'll see you later.
You too.